Demilitarized Zone, or DMZ, DMZ, whichever pronunciation you choose, but at the end of the day, it's something like a landing area. Yeah, I mean, by definition, network security feature. Features can be anything that protects an organization's internal network, and that's important, from untrusted traffic. Well, there's also other network security features like firewalls, but this one is specific, as mentioned. It's more like entrance area, something where you allow untrusted traffic, which is usually from the internet. So, for example, if you have a customer-facing website, then ideally you place it, of course, in the DMZ, because that's a separated network with strict connections to your internal network, and it sits behind a firewall, so outside of the internal network. So therefore, it's kind of a zone that allows customers to browse your website, use a certain web logic, access only the respective data that is required, and everything else stays behind the curtains and stays in the internal network. You can use it to host public services, as anything that is facing the internet. And important is that you separate out certain logic from your application to really make it different to the data that you want to protect. Everything that's sensitive, and sometimes you have it that your system contains both public data and critical, sensitive, secret data, and ideally you have a split of databases. What happens often is when you install a web application, you should separate out the web logic, so that's what basically produces the website on the fly with the data that you have in a database. The data set that you actually require to be displayed, which is anyway the public data, or if it's a customer self-service, of course you have to produce some customer data that is shown on the website. But ideally that comes from a separated database, which is also sitting. I mean, you can protect your. I mean, you have to decide if you protect your corporate network more, then ideally you have a clone of that data set sitting also in the DMZ. If you want to protect the data more, then obviously, and you put emphasis on the application, then you can keep it in the internal network, but then you have to configure the connection between the web logic and the database very strict and very secure and very slim, so that only what is required is displayed, and ideally there's no lateral move possible. And that's why I'm saying, again, separate the database, that if there's any confidential data that has to be used to operate the system, that it's not even connected to this whole data flow coming from the untrusted zone in the DMZ, going through the firewall, and then accessing the slim database that only contains the data required. So carefully designed, it's a very good thing. Often it's a bit misused. Um, I mean, the reverse proxies are sitting in the DMZ, but nothing else. So then after reverse proxy, you immediately go directly into the corporate network to pull the data and run the application, which is not a good design, because then you're just channeling it into the insecure area. And I mean, I'm not saying the internal network is insecure, but obviously you're not putting as many emphasis as you put into your DMZ, which you can protect better with a lot of. You can put a WAF there, application firewall. Therefore, for avoid end-to-end connections that allow the attacker to follow the path, break the connections, and allow kind of gates in between that you can then secure via firewall and configuration and hardening. If you need another illustration, I always use that hotel lobby concept, or actually the whole hotel is more like your system landscape. So you have to imagine there's a drive-in for your hotel where the cars stop and drop off people. Um, that can be seen already as one layer of DMZ, because that's literally a public space. Cars are stopping, anyone can hop off. Also, people who don't live in the hotel. Hotel lobby would be more something that is more describing this DMZ approach, because the lobby is a demilitarized zone. There's guests from the hotel, but there's also visitors, there's other people, but it's kind of a still open area. It's still protected through the hotel door, There's a doorman that looks at the people, doesn't let everyone in, and also observes who is supposed to be there. But you cannot go up to the room. Only because you're in the lobby, you're not entitled to go to the room. So you may have to get a lift card, or the lift boy have to take you up, and then you go to your corridor, and then you have another door card to enter your door, and then you have the safety box in the room, which is then also one more time protected, and that could be like an illustration of your system landscape. So the lobby of the hotel and the area in front of it, that is kind of a dual layer DMZ, which allows CCTV cameras to be installed, security men sitting around, and also some kind of hotel rules already apply to that area, because that's considered hotel property. So the security can enforce that and basically ask people to leave if they're not needed there. And so again, it's like a need to know, need to be kind of area. And in the network segmentation, it's exactly the same thing. You're basically, when you call the URL of your website, that web logic that produces this presentation layer is located in the DMZ. There's a web server. Again, slim web logic, some data query logic, ideally not exposing how the structure of the actual database looks like. And because ideally you have some kind of a middleware database, API calls, which make things easier, because you then cannot extract then the full data set or the whole table, or it doesn't give away too much from your database details. Ideally authenticated APIs, of course, and that is where the zero trust approach creeps in the setup, so that each of these small interconnections which lead the user from the presentation layer down to the way where he or she can access their data, each of these little connection is authenticated. So if it's not properly authenticated, it doesn't even load the page, it doesn't even query the data, it doesn't display it properly. You can put two-factor authentication in between. Also the database calls should be separately authenticated, so that it's not reusable. So in case someone happens to get to the database, they can't use the credentials to query more data than actually was used in the WebLogic anyway. So it requires a lot of clustering. If you have infinite resources, or let's say if cost is not a concern and security concern is higher, try to separate as much as you can, split the database into pieces. You can interconnect. There will be minor performance issues, but it's worth all the security, because it's like it will be designed like in these ships. When there's one hole in the wall, water comes in, the shutter comes down, and the water is contained in one area, and the other ones are kept like as air bubbles. But if you don't have the shutter concept, the water will flow all the way in, and then you only fix the hole, or you just leave it to sink. And here the same thing, you can have multiple DMZ layers. Again, hotel concept, you can have the front and the lobby separated. You can also have another lounge, all possible, as long as you know, and that's usually depending on your business process, how you want to segregate these things. Is this access for customers? Is this access for dealers? Is this access for partners? Is this access for employees or partners, or any other one who has a different kind of need in terms of using the application and uses different data, should have a kind of segregated landing area. Again, hotel concept, lobby, lounge, corridor, front of the hotel, backyard of the hotel. Everything serves a different purpose, and allows you to install appropriate security measures for that particular area, because you know how sensitive the data is that is in that area used, and that allows a certain segregation of environments as well. But again, Demilitarized Zone is only one piece of it, and works well with other items together. And one more thing, so if you do it in the cloud, it's exactly the same. Ideally, you have a separate cloud room for the DMZ. That would be the best choice. because that allows you to configure this cloud room as a public cloud room, and the actual cloud room where the data is inside you just leave separate and hidden from the public, and that would represent also like a protection layer